And welcome to today's webinar, which is hosted by the Clean Energy Solutions Center and the International Smart Grid Action Network. Today we are very fortunate to have Bruce Lee and Hans Kim joining us. This outstanding group of panelists will be discussing the Jeju Island Smart Grid Network project. And one important note of mention before we begin our presentations is that the Clean Energy Solutions Center does not endorse or recommend specific products or services. Information provided in this webinar is featured in the Solutions Center's resource library as one of many best practices resources reviewed and selected by technical experts. Now, before we begin, I just want to go over some of the webinar features. For audio, you have two options. You may either listen through your computer or over your telephone. So if you choose to listen through your computer, please select the mic and speakers option in the audio pane. Doing this will just eliminate the possibility of feedback and echo. And if you select the telephone option, a box on the right side will display the telephone number and audio pin that you should use to dial in. Panelists, we ask that you please mute your audio device while you are not presenting. If you have technical difficulties with the webinar, you may contact the GoToWebinar's help desk at 888-259-3826. And we encourage all attendees to submit any questions that they might have at any point during the webinar. To submit a question, you may you just go to the question pane in the GoToWebinar window, and you can submit it there. And if you're having difficulty viewing the materials through the webinar portal, you will find PDF copies of the presentations at cleanenergysolutions.org/training. And you may follow along as our speakers present. Also, an audio recording of the presentations will be posted to the Solutions Center training page within a week of today's broadcast. And we have an exciting agenda prepared for you today that is focused on the Jeju Island Smart Grid project, one of the world's largest smart grid communities. And before our speakers begin their presentations, I'll provide a short informative overview of the Clean Energy Solutions Center initiative. And then following the presentations, we'll have a question and answer session, followed by some closing remarks, and then a brief survey. And this slide provides a bit of background in terms of how the Solutions Center came to be. The Solutions Center is an initiative of the Clean Energy Ministerial, and is supported through a partnership with UN Energy. It was launched in April of 2011 and is primarily led by Australia, the United States, and other CEM partners. Outcomes of this unique partnership include support of developing countries through enhancement of resources on policies relating to energy access, no-cost expert policy assistance, and peer-to-peer learning and training tools such as the webinar you're attending today. And there are four primary goals for the Solutions Center. The first goal is to serve as a clearinghouse of clean energy policy resources. Second goal is to serve to share policy best practices, data, and analysis tools specific to clean energy policies and programs. And third, the Solutions Center strives to deliver dynamic services that enable expert assistance, learning, and peer-to-peer sharing of experiences. And then lastly, the center fosters dialogue on emerging policy issues and innovation around the globe. And our primary audience is energy policy makers and analysts from governments and technical organizations in all countries. Then we also strive to engage with the private sector, NGOs, and civil society. So a marquee feature that the Solutions Center provides is the Ask an Expert policy assistance. So Ask an Expert, it's a valuable service offered through the Solutions Center at zero cost. And we have established a broad team of over 30 experts from around the globe who are available to provide remote policy advice and analysis to all countries at no cost. So for example, in the area of demand and policy evaluation, we are very pleased to have Bruno Lapallone, the Vice President and co-founder of Enerdata, serving as our expert. So if you have a need for policy assistance on demand and policy evaluation, or any other clean energy sector, we encourage you to use this useful service. Again, it is provided free of charge. So to request assistance, simply submit your request by registering through our Ask an Expert feature at cleanenergysolutions.org/expert. And we also invite you to spread the word about this service to those in your networks and organizations. So in summary, we encourage you to explore and take advantage of the Solution Center resources and services, including the expert policy assistance, subscribe to our newsletter, and participate in webinars like these. And now I'd like to provide some introductions for our distinguished panelists today. Our first speaker that we'll hear from is Mr. Bruce Lee, the Deputy Secretary General for the International Smart Grid Network, where he deals with smart grid and renewable energy projects that are related to global climate change. And following Mr. Lee, we will hear from Mr. Hans Kim from Korea Telecom. And as a Director of Smart Grid Development in KT, Mr. Hans is responsible for leading the business and technical strategies for smart grid and Korea micro energy grid. And with those introductions, please join me in welcoming Mr. Bruce Lee to the webinar.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Welcome, everyone, for joining us today. I'm Bruce Lee from ISGAN Secretariat. I'm a the ISGAN was established in 2011, and we are targeting to facilitate the government-to-government cooperation between government. So, first of all, I'd like to thank you for the people of Clean Energy Solution Center and our ISGAN Next One for preparing this wonderful webinar session. And I assume that Jeju Jeju Smart Grid project is nearly the first smart grid project in the world, and it is well known as a project mainly to test interoperability among the technologies and utilities for smart grids and to verify technologies. So today I'd like to deliver a very brief introduction of Jeju Smart Grid project first, and then more detailed information shall be followed by Mr. Han. Next slide, please. Yeah, as you see here, the target of the Jeju Smart Grid project is that to develop and verify the smart grid technology and business model. Actually, the project was started on 2009 December, and the first stage was finalized in May 2011. That is, in order to facilitate all the cooperation among the consortium. That is, you can call the first phase. The second phase started in June 2011 and finalized by May 2013 last year. So that means this Jeju Smart Grid project now already finalized, and then we have some internal reported to the government. And if you look at the budget, the total budget investment amount is $230 million US. Out of them, government invested around 30% of total investments, up to $70 million US. And private sector, they invested around $160 million US. It's composed of 70% of total investments. Next, please. Next slide, please. Yeah, what we have done during this period is that first we can see we have verified some technologies. Mostly we have 7 categories we verified the test technologies. Among them, the most important is that AMI areas. Another is EMS. The third one is EBI and interconnections and ESSs. So mostly we recognize that AMI and EMS and EBI, these areas we mainly tested during this project periods. Next slide, please. And then another big result we can get from this Jeju Smart Grid project is that we just verified some business model. This business model we can classify into 3 main areas. The first area is consumer domain. The second is that transportation domain. And third one is the other one. So mostly total 9 business model we have recognized to verify during the project period. And this business model now they already reported to the government and verified. And we are going to transfer this business model to new Korea Smart City project, which will be we expect to start it in early 2015. Next slide, please. So one of our very famous Korea research institutes, they prepared and verified some this project results during last year. So if you look at very briefly, we have total 153 technologies developed and verified. Out of them, 111 IP has been registered in Korea government here. And we think that what we need more in smart grid business is that the architecture and interoperability standards. As you all know, that the smart grid architecture is very, very complicated, and we need to get some consensus in global society. That's why we also need more complicated architecture system, we think. So as per their survey, they just give some grades based on the SGMM for these five category areas. So probably within each category, the final anticipated is the figures is generally we think higher than 3.5 points, but less than 4.5 grade. So generally, on average, we think that the final figures based on the SGMM model, it could be around the 3.5 grades. Next slide, please. So as I briefly mentioned in the previous slides, we just recognized the big results with big returns from this project is that we recognize we got this 9 business model from this project. So these 9 business model, that's based on these 3 business categories, mainly on the smart consumer domain, and second is based on the smart transportation domain, and the other is some energy use consulting service and road leveling and power quality improvement, etc. So these 9 business models, now we are going to adopt new Korean smart city project, which will be going to start this early 2015. Next slide, please. Yeah, so what's next? As I mentioned, the Jeju Smart Grid project already finalized in May 2013 last year. So during last second half, the Korean government and the KSCI, they prepared some next projects, which will be lasted another 3 years. So during last second half years, we just prepared the project and let our candidates companies in the local here, they prepare the application. And then now from this year, we are doing some feasibility study through some Korean some research institutes among the support, with the support of Korean government. So this feasibility study shall be finalized. We expect to around this year, August or September. Then after we got some results from that research institutes for the feasibility study, then probably we can expect the project will be started from early next year, 2015. And we also expect the duration for new smart grid city project will last 3 years. So, and the timing and the schedule can be subject to the changes. So this is a very brief introduction of Jeju Smart Grid project. And the more details information shall be followed by the Mr. Han. Welcome, Mr. Han, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. This is James Kim from KTA, Korea Telecom. Actually, it's a great pleasure to introduce a Jeju Island field trial on smart grid. Well, actually, my role in Jeju field trial was project leader of the KT Consortium. So, next slide, please. My talk today consists of 3 parts. In the very first part, I will introduce a brief aspect of Korean economy, including power market. And then I will show more details on what's really going on Jeju field trial. In the final part, I will summarize what we learned in this field trial. Next slide, please. Well, this slide shows a brief introduction of South Korea economy. Well, actually, South Korea is quite a small country, less than 100 in the world as a size of maybe the country. But regarding on economic aspect, such as GDP and the volume of trading, is quite high level, around 10th of the world. And another key aspect is some industries such as semiconductor and shipbuilding, automobile, etc. are also positioned in around top 5 levels of the world. Next slide, please. This slide shows the grid system overview in 2008. In the right-hand side, there are some indices, especially the rate of transmission and distribution loss is around 4.01%, the number 1 in the world. And blackout duration is around 16 minutes a year. The annual index is top 2 of the world. And also load factor is around 76%, number 1 in the world. Next slide, please. But regarding on this environment, energy dependency in Korea is a very serious issue nowadays, because Korea is one of 10 largest energy consumption countries of the world. So we have around 97% of foreign energy dependency. So how to manage of this energy dependency is one of the national agenda. Next slide, please. This slide shows the overall structure of the power market in Korea. Well, actually, before 2001, the Korean power market was not privatized and still a part of public sector governed by Korean government. But from 2001, the structure of the power market started to restructure into a very competitive environment. But this figure shows a little bit distorted the aspect, because in a generation part area are fully competitive and privatized market. So there are more than 80 generation company, but in transmission and distribution and including sales part, there's only one big giant company, KEPCO. So the next step of this restructuring process will be the competitive environment in T&D and sales. So this restructuring process is still ongoing issue in Korean power market. Next slide, please. Here's why Korean government and private sectors are trying to implement smart grid environment in Korea. Well, actually, the level of electricity consumption in Korea is around the number 10 in the left-hand side graph shows this point. But the volume of power consumption per capita is around 2 times comparing OECD average around, it shows in some graphs in the right-hand side. So how to reduce or manage of this energy usage and consumption aspect in Korea is a hard issue. That's why one of the reasons of a smart grid project in Korea. Actually, from some survey, internal survey, and the Korean government mentioned this situation is raised from the very low price and easy access for electricity usage in Korean economy. Next slide, please. Okay, in this second part, I will introduce more details on Jeju field trial. Next slide, please. Jeju is how to explain. Jeju is quite lovely island for honeymooners in Korea. But why Jeju was selected for this field trial was it's a quite isolated environment as an island. So the system of Jeju Island is quite independent on the mainland. And another issue was Jeju Island is quite windy and sunny environment. So we expected the abundant renewable energy source. And another issue is the tourism issue as a World Natural Heritage. But first of all, the Jeju local government shows there's very strong intention to join smart grid environment, smart grid project for their future as a carbon-free island for their tourism department. That's why Jeju Island was selected for this smart grid field trial. Next slide, please. In Jeju field trial, we identified 5 domains for the business model development and verification of technologies. Because Korea is a very stable economy, but it is very dependent on the export trading system. So this identification of domains is based on a business aspect, not on technology point. So the first domain is a smart power grid. The main purpose of this smart power grid is to upgrade the existing power grid network. And the second domain was smart renewable, to operate stable and clean energy from renewable resources. And third domain was smart transportation to build electric vehicle infrastructure. The first one was a smart place, is to build energy efficiency, very energy efficient infrastructure. The last one is 5 was smart electric service. Based on smart grid infrastructure, we expected new and very advanced services. So those 5 domains were identified and implemented in Jeju field trial. Next slide, please. Well, actually, the Jeju field trial was planned only for the public sector members in original, but based on very long discussion between public and private sectors, we agreed that the field trial should be joined from private sectors as well to show our ability and competency in the smart grid. So here is the list of 12 consortia, including KEPCO and any other private firms. And there are more than 170 firms from private sectors, especially in smart place. There are 4 consortia: SK Telecom, KT, Korea Telecom, and LG Electronics and KEPCO. Those 3 private firms, SK Telecom, KT, and LG Electronics, are a very dominant player in consumer market in communications and wide appliances. So those 3 private firms are intended to find new their growth engine for business aspect. That's why they involved in smart place domain. And regarding on smart transportation domain, there are 2 interesting private firms, private consortia: SK Energy, GS Caltex. Those 2 consortia are planned to develop the electric vehicle-based business model, because their legacy business is a gas station and oil-related business. So when electric vehicle will be fully implemented, they worried about the losing of their legacy business model. That's why they had interest on the smart transportation domain. And third area, smart renewables. There are 2 another the private firms: Hyundai Heavy Industry, POSCO, a steel making company. Those 2 firms are consuming around 10% of overall Korean power usage. So they expected to develop their own distributed energy resources from renewable technologies. That's why they are interested on this smart renewables domain. And regarding remaining 2 domains, smart power grid and smart electricity service, there are only the existing players in Korean power market, KEPCO and Korea Power Exchange, KPX. So those are a brief overview of the involved consortia in Jeju field trial. Next slide, please. One of the key interesting aspects of Jeju field trial is this project implemented very wide real field. It's called Guja Prefecture in Jeju Island. So smart place, smart transportation, smart renewable, and smart power grid, and smart services are implemented in its wide and broad areas in Jeju Island. Next slide, please. I will more details on each domain. Regarding on smart place, main objectives were to increase energy efficiency and reduce energy consumption via AMI technologies, and to control energy usage via two-way communication energy management system, so-called building energy management system, BEMS, or factory energy management system, BEMS, and home energy management system, HEMS. So the key technologies on this smart place was AMI, as I mentioned, and another issue was the automated real-time demand response was identified and implemented. Next slide, please. Domain 2, smart transportation. There are two objectives. First one is establishing a charging infrastructure for electric vehicle, and second one was allowing consumer to charge during low demand and low rate hours, and we sell during peak hours. Regarding on key technologies was to develop electric vehicle itself and charging infrastructure. And another issue was how to develop equal grid technologies with collaboration of ICT aspect. Next slide, please. On the smart renewable domain, it's planned to create large-scale renewable generation power plant and to build green homes and buildings that are energy independent using renewable energy resources. So key technologies was to develop for a stable connection of renewable generator to the grid, and here how to develop ESS4 energy storage system for bulk generation, bulk renewable generation system for the shaping of fluctuation from a bulk renewable system. Next slide, please. Regarding on fourth domain, smart power grid, objectives were to establish a bi-directional power grid that allow new integrated complex business. Those are already mentioned in previous three domains. And the second point was to increase energy efficiency and quality through self-automated recovery system. The next slide, please. And the last one was smart electricity service. The objectives were to encourage a TOU pricing system, including the real-time aspect with consumer participation, and to promote online system of power exchange and derivatives. Key technologies were to develop a real-time pricing and demand response system, actually a real-time automated demand response. Next slide, please. Yeah, here is the brief architecture of a smart place domain from KT Consortium aspect. In home and building factory area, you can see quite many required devices and technologies. Those are a smart meter and renewable resources and energy storage, electric vehicle charging system, and smart appliances and smart box etc. Those are implemented in home and building factory aspect. And from those devices, the relative data and information was collected into operating center through the communication network. Those were third generation mobile communication and IP-based network in fixed communication technology. And also other technologies are used, such as fiber to the home. And based on this communication network, the gathered data are stored and processed for to develop new business model and identify the very near future new the regulation refinement. Next slide, please. Well, actually, this slide was already introduced in Bruce's presentation, so I would like to skip this slide. Next slide, please. And here are some aspects of what technologies were verified. Well, actually, if my knowledge is correct, there are more than 100 technologies were tested and verified, but in this slide not covers all of them, but you can see some key technologies what we did. For example, AMI, EMS, and smart appliances were very well verified in Jeju field trial. So most of them are already implemented in the leading of Korean government and private sector in Korean of all countries. And EV charging infrastructure already very well verified, including energy storage system. And regarding on grid integration technologies, unfortunately, I don't have much knowledge on this aspect because I'm working for KT, focusing on marketplace aspect, but from the message of KEPCO, the dominant company in Korean power market mentioned that they achieved a very distinguished result from this field trial. The last one is demand response. Actually, the demand response was not the active technologies and market in Korea in the past, but nowadays it's a very hot technology and business in Korean market based on the verification of those technologies in Jeju field trial. Next slide, please. As a last part of my talk, I will explain what we learned in Jeju field trial briefly. Next slide, please. This slide shows the smart grid roadmap in Korea is identified in 2009. Before smart grid Jeju field trial project, another R&D project was researched and developed in Korea from 2005, if my memory is correct. At that time, the project is called Power IP Converged Project for Intelligent Grid. But based on the achievement and experience of Power IP Converged Project, the Jeju field trial started from 2009. And 2010, Korean government launched Smart Grid Promotion Law, or the very PD promotion of smart grid issue in Korean economy. And based on this promotional law, the other scheduled are still ongoing in Korea. For example, the metro-wide smart grid project are already started. So in this metro-wide smart grid project, some private consortia involved in Jeju field trial has a new business opportunity in specific area they involved in Jeju field trial. And in the end of 2030, Korean government has a plan. Korea will be a fully smart grid deployed country of the world. So this is very brief a roadmap identified from Korean government. Next slide, please. Before I introduce some lessons learned, I'd like to point out the smart grid promotion law. Well, actually, the background of this law was three aspects. The first one is need for systematic and consistent smart grid business promotion because of the a little bit distorted structure of Korean power market. It's not fully competitive. So how to encourage deployment of smart grid is based on the very regulatory aspect. That's why this smart grid promotion law was launched. The second point was a limitation of current regulation in system, is already I just mentioned, and how to promote integration of power infrastructure with IT technology for co-growth. Because from our experience in Jeju field trial, the convergence with other industries are very important aspect. So the last background to mention this point. Regarding on legislation, there are 5 points. First one is setting up smart grid implementation action plan for every 5 years. And smart grid service provider registration and subsidies for smart grid private investment, and dedicate areas for smart grid implementation. And the last one is certification and standardization on related technologies and products. Next slide, please. From our experience in Jeju, here is some aspect of what obstacles we experienced. First one is regulation. When the Jeju field trial started with private sectors, the existing Korean regulation for energy aspect, the private sector cannot manage any technologies or the business, even though it's a part of a microgrid aspect, the out of scope of a demarcation point from existing power company. So the regulation issue was very hard, but fortunately, Jeju province government refined their regulation in the local province, so we could join the project. The regulation was a very big obstacle at the time. And others, for example, the skeptical eyes of stakeholders, low consumers' participation. Actually, I believe most of you understand why consumers' participation is quite important issue and very seriously required in smart grid. But it was very, we felt very difficult to interact with customers. So that was another our new study point in nowadays. And the level of business model, even though we developed quite many new business models based on smart grid environment, we couldn't find the exact confirmation the new business model will be a big volume of private sectors, the next business engine. And another point was reluctance of market player with best interest and a lack of private investment attraction. Excuse me. And another important point was, it's already mentioned in the very first part of my presentation, low and uniform pricing didn't make any interest from the consumers' participation, and including low incentive for private investment. And regarding on technology aspect, at the time, from 2009 to 2013, there were too many available or candidate technologies, and sometimes there is no the relative or appropriate technology. Those were obstacles. Next slide, please. Even though we felt many difficulties to from feasibility trials, we find and identified some solutions for the early deployment of smart grid. First one is deregulation for market entry and competition. Based on the restructuring program of Korean power market by Korean government, the regulation aspect is ongoing nowadays. And the second point was dedicated joint organization for smart grid planning for public and private sector. Fortunately, the Korea Smart Grid Institute, governed by Korean government, was established. So it's very well resolved at the moment. And another issue was government consistent will and driving force, and promotion to provoke participation. And R&D competition and incentive was also a very serious issue to be taken into account. And from business point of view, the discovering demand response resources and setting up utilization plan is considered. And introduction of various pricing is also mentioned. And regarding on the finance aspect and the budget and how to make a new business model was also should be considered. And the last point is network security and data privacy issue. From technical point of view, most of the communication technology for smart grid is based on IP protocol based, but IP mentioned the lack of security issue. So those are another hot R&D issue nowadays. Next slide, please. This is another key point of a national smart grid roadmap in Korea. But anyhow, based on this national roadmap, the Korean government and private sectors are studying and research and develop some technology and business model, and those are still ongoing status in Korean power market. but based on the experience of an achievement Jeju field trial, this national roadmap is here very well operating now from my personal point of view. That's all of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bruce and Mr. Hans, for those outstanding presentations. And I do just want to remind the audience that if they have any questions on any aspect of the presentation, they can submit those questions through the question pane in the GoToWebinar box. And we did receive a few questions from the audience, so I will go ahead and read those and give Mr. Bruce Lee and Mr. Hans Kim the opportunity to address those. And the first question that I received is, what are the objectives of the Korea Smart City Initiative?
Okay, well, the exact title of smart grid, smart city should be replaced by a Korean smart grid city project. Well, actually, smart city is a little bit different, the vocabulary or definition read by another industry. So I'm going to focus on smart grid city initiative. As I mentioned, and Bruce also introduced the Korean smart grid roadmap. Mentioned that in 2030, the smart grid will be fully implemented nationwide. So for this final goal, in the set of middle stage, a specific big city will be deployed through smart grid technologies and business aspect. That's why some metro areas, metro city were selected for this smart grid city project the last year. And for the in the next 3 years, the relative the technologies and devices will be implemented in around 10 metro cities in Korean economy, and then the other areas, small cities and the countryside will be deployed until 2030. So the main purpose of the Smart Grid City initiative is to deploy smart grid technologies and business until 2030. That's my understanding. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm Bruce again. If I add some more comment on this, yes, I agree with Mr. Hans. That means that the objective is test the smart grid project is we like to get something for the some technology and some policy, something like that. So now, as Mr. Hans also mentioned that currently, as far as my understanding, the task force team for the Korea Smart City project now already active very actively. And this also led by the Korean government and the KSCI as well. Now, 7 cities in Korea now already involved this new project, and total 8 consortia for this Korea Smart City project. They already applied the application, and that's why now it is under the feasibility study by the Korean government right now. So probably from next year, once this project initiated, then some of any other foreign stakeholders could be participate in this project as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kim and Mr. Lee. And the next question, I'll read through it and let me know If you'd like me to read it again, it's a little bit longer. The question is, what is the average % reduction in energy consumption realized from the Jeju trial? What are the top 3 factors contributing to the reduction?
Okay, this is Kim. Regarding our first question, what is the average % reduction in energy consumption realized from the Jeju trial? The overall average % was around 10. Actually, it depends on the home and building because the residential customer and the business officers shows a little bit different the level of reduction, but average around 10%. But from our understanding, it's quite good result because Jeju Island is very, very countryside, so there were not sufficient load to reduce. But anyhow, the 10% is a answer. And regarding on the what are the top 3 factors contributing to the reduction is, well, actually, we expected some very advanced technologies such as automated the control algorithm for the home, inside home and building. That was our personal, very first expectation. Well, actually, based on technologies, only less than 5% result, only 5% reduction on energy consumption from our survey. Others depend on how to change users' behavior on energy consumption. For example, how to show their energy consumption status through the display. For example, smartphone app or a specific channel of IPTV and the tablet PCs. We show the specific parameters and indices. For example, the comparing with the neighbors or the just the average of town. So how to touch their competitive mind. We say this a kind of how to touch their jealousy comparing their friend or their neighbors was another a good approach. So as a conclusion, technology is not the major matter on this how to reduce the energy consumption. The how to change users' behavior on energy consumption, it should be very seriously taken into account. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kim. In addition to the last comment that you made there about behavior changes, have you seen a greater acceptance of smart appliances by consumers during and after the trial?
Regarding on acceptance of smart appliances is depending on the age or generation of a consumer, because very old generation didn't care about any technologies, but young generation is an early adopter of new technologies. They had a very interested to manage and control the energy usage through smart appliances and with management system. So the answer is some people is very accepted, but others are not. It depends on their generation. That's my experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And the next question talks a little bit more broadly about the nationwide smart grid goal. Do you think that the completion of a nationwide smart grid by 2030 is achievable? And could you discuss some of the main barriers towards achieving that goal?
Yeah, I'm Bruce speaking. Yeah, it totally depends on the government, how they very strongly process with some major stakeholders in Korea. And also, during the project in Jeju, there are some sensitive issues specifically for the private stakeholders. That's why you cannot give clear answer about vacation right now, but I can say firstly, it must be based on how the government have a strong policy on these smart grids in Korea society. And secondly, how can we do something for private stakeholders? They feel they have some more strong benefits in case they involve this smart grid business or not. But personally, I think currently from the next week, expect the big project will be started again. That's why right now 8 consortia they already applied the project. That's why we assume that based on the current situation, we can assume we can reach that target by the 2030. Thank you.
All right, thank you both again. And that was the last question that I received. So at this point, I'd like to just give you both an opportunity, if you'd like, for any closing remarks or final statements that you might have.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for everyone to joining us today, and we are very much pleased to deliver this presentation for the Jeju Smart Grid project. As you know, Jeju project was, I understand, is very well known to some many people involving the smart grid business worldwide. And we hope that we can deliver some very valuable results to somebody who has interest in the Jeju project. So we already announced that the new Korea Smart City project will be initiated from early next year. So if any foreign companies or some stakeholders could have some interest, then it's very welcome to involve together. That's why we can develop a new project in Korea very successfully. Thank you.
All right. Thank you again to both the panelists, Mr. Bruce Lee and Mr. Hans Kim. And now I'd just like to ask our audience to take a quick minute to answer a very brief survey that we have. Your feedback is very important and just allows us to know what we are doing well and where we can improve. So Heather, if you wouldn't mind displaying the first question. That question is, the webinar content provided me with useful information and insight. And the next question, please, Heather. The webinar's presenters were effective. And the final question is, overall, the webinar met my expectations. All right, and thank you for participating in that survey. And on behalf of the Clean Energy Solutions Center, I'd like to extend a thank you to all of our expert panelists and to our attendees for participating in today's webinar. And we very much appreciate your time, and I invite you, our attendees, to check the Solutions Center website over the next week if you would like to view the slides and listen to a recording of today's presentation, as well as previously held webinars. So additionally, you will find information on upcoming webinars and other training events. And we also invite you to inform your colleagues and those in your networks about Solutions Center resources and services, including the no-cost policy support. So I hope everyone has a great rest of your day, and we hope to see you again at future Clean Energy Solutions Center events. And this concludes our webinar.